first go to Sederunt and apologies. Claire, do you have any?
Thank you, Chairman. I have apologies from Councillors Wood and Councillor Diggle. Thank you.
And I have Councillor Wiper. There's an apology as well. He's going to hospital today. No others, obviously. Could we move then on to item 2, which is declarations of interest? Any members? No? Good. Before we go on further into the actual body of the meeting, I have asked the Director to introduce the new members of his management team to committee. I thought it was a good time to have an update on where we are and what their jobs are going to be. So I'm going to hand over to the Director. We've got them here. I thought it was a good idea to have them at the beginning of the meeting, and then they can go off and do their jobs as is appropriate. So that's why we're doing it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If I could ask James McDowell to stand up first. James is my new Resourcing and Improvement Manager, leading a new integrated support services. James, come forward and say a few words about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, as Bill said there, James McDowell, new Resourcing and Improvement Manager. Probably just give you a bit of background about myself. Started as an apprentice at 16. I'm not saying how many years ago, that might give too much away, but I have worked in neighbourhood services, property maintenance, and laterally into the business side where I was a business support manager. Going forward, looking to integrate support services. We're looking to develop the staff that are currently there within the service. We're looking to professionalise the service and through innovation and efficiencies look to, better working practices. Thank you.
Charles. Charles Clemmy is my new Senior Manager for the Road Service.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First of all, my background, I've effectively spent all my working life with Dumfries and Galloway Regional Council. Sorry, Dumfries and Galloway Council. When I started, it was Dumfries and Galloway Regional Council. In roads-related roles, I'm a chartered civil engineer, my initial experience being in design, working on projects such as Dumfries Bypass. For the last 20 years, I've had a number of roads maintenance-related posts, such as Principal Road Services Officer Stewardship and also Principal Road Services Officer for the West. I've also recently finished an 18-month secondment to the Chief Executive Service, where I developed the strategic commissioning and delivery process. My service delivers the management of the road maintenance function, also harbour management, and the network function, issuing permits, permissions for the road network itself, and coordination of all works within the Council's road network. My priorities are to focus on processes and people. I'd like to continue to build on the work that I've carried out already in reviewing road maintenance activities and continue to develop new business processes and working practices that are efficient and effective. As far as considering the people aspects, I want to build strong, resilient teams designed for the future, and I'll put people and communities at the heart of these plans and build confidence in the road service. The new structure I put in place will reflect this. And integral to these two aspects is communication. And if I could just mention that I'm going to put in place some area road shows commencing in April and May. It's proposed to arrange local road shows at our DGFirst depots in Stranraer on the 26th of the 4th, Castle Douglas the 10th of the 5th, Dumfries the 1st of the 5th, and also Lockerbie on the 1st of the 5th. These dates and times will be confirmed and invites will go out to all members tomorrow. And certainly your support would be appreciated for these. The events are designed to give members the opportunity to engage with road service staff and to give members an indication of what we did last year, what our works programme is for the forthcoming year. Also give members the opportunity to see new items of plant and a briefing on their operation, and it's also considered it's a development opportunity for staff to engage with local members. These will be a precursor to ward visits that we'll be arranging throughout the year. Thank you.
Charles. Fraser. Fraser Marshall is my new Senior Manager, Neighbourhood Services.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Brief background for me, I started in Wigton some 20 years ago in grounds maintenance. I then got the post of London Street Service Officer out there. And 5 years ago, got the post of Principal Environment Officer in Dumfries. And now, as Bill says, Senior Manager for Neighbourhood Services. So what do neighbourhood services do? We collect your waste, we empty your bins, we clean your streets, litter pick. We do all grounds maintenance work, and we do burial grounds, and we bury people as well. First priority has to be to get a structure that is fit for purpose, and to try and modernise the service and meet the many challenges that the next couple of years will no doubt bring, and take it forward from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Fraser.
So I hope members now know who's doing what at what level. And I think when we get further on with the business plan, you will be coming back in June with a proper structure plan of how things are working in DGFirst, which will be very welcome, right down to service manager. However, we'll deal with that in the next item. So could we move on to the minute? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Just referring to the business plan report on page 11, we've been introduced to some of these people just now. I'd just like to know where they are in that future plan.
I think we'll come to that when we get to the business plan.
So we will be able to identify
Absolutely.
them and put some tags on them later on. Thank you.
I wish I could electronically tag them and find them.
Good. So could we just deal with the minutes of the meeting of the 19th of February? Are they correct minute? Yep. Good. Well, before we go on to the item 4, I would just like, at the start of this meeting, I'm sure the committee would like to extend the appreciation which was given at the full council for the way in which DGFirst, and in all its capacities, dealt with and coped with the adverse weather conditions of March 22nd and beyond, and the knock-on effects that those conditions brought to communities and members of the public. You'll note in item 5, under operational updates, that we do have an update with that, and that snow event is one of those, and that is where we'll learn perhaps about the costs and the implications of that. But at this juncture, I'm sure on your behalf, I have already thanked the director for an efficient and effective dealing of those difficult days. He rightly pointed out that it wasn't him, but all his staff who pulled together and worked hard to ensure that everything was done to alleviate problems as quickly as possible. I have to say, in turn, I pointed out that someone had to press the button, so to speak, and that would set the procedures moving and get the people in the right places and to deal with such an event. And that really was down to him. Had there been a shambles, he'd have been up here today and we'd have been asking why. So I equally think when something has gone well, the person who is responsible should be recognised for that. And I, on behalf of the committee, would like to thank you very much for a very efficient way of dealing with that thing. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I hope you pass that on to all your staff.
We will do.
Right. Item 4. The business plan. Now, this is a refresh report, which is an opportunity, I think, for us to comment. If you notice at 3.2, to consider expansion, clarification, or amendment. I see it as comment, challenge, or change. It's not here to. It's not really here to be totally changed today, but it is here to be discussed. If there's any items in here that you are particularly interested in or would like to see included in June, I think you'll expect a full business plan to come forward.
We will bring back the refreshed business plan for approval.
Good. Okay, so would you like to take us through this, or would you just like members to comment?
First of all, if I could apologise, something went badly wrong in the printing process. We have no idea what. When it left us, the business plan was fine. When it got to the committee papers, there were bits missing. So if we could work on the basis of the coloured version, it would make, I think, both our lives easier. The coloured version has an awful lot of yellow highlighting, which are the paragraphs that will need to change because time has moved on. So this is not a rewrite as such of the business plan. This is a refresh. I'd also like to emphasise that today is not a consideration of performance. When we come back in June, there will be a performance report as well as the business plan. So if we could focus on the content and the issues that are in here, then that will make our life easier.
Councillor Dryburgh.
Thanks, Chair, and I think Bill will understand when I talk about the kiss system. We've already kissed him for doing all the work they've done on the 22nd of March. Just looking at the business plan itself, and on page 13 of the attachment, and it's 22 of the papers in the report, I'm just looking at, Bill, at how we will get there working with partners regime, and at the end of the first sort of paragraph, it talks about working with Dumfries and Galloway communities. And obviously the community resilience is part of that particular thing, I would imagine. But we've also got, as part of the budget setting process, a couple of £100,000 across Dumfries and Galloway for commissioning work in, I believe it's cemeteries and also community type work as well. Can you tell us how that's actually going to work?
I can make a start at it, Archie. There are two sums of £100,000 which were agreed in the budget setting process. There is £100,000 to minor repairs and refurbishments to burial grounds, and that work is currently being planned and will be executed as soon as possible. Roughly split 50-50 between minor and infrastructure repairs and safety repairs. I'm sure if you've got detailed questions, Fraser will be able to tell you about the programme in your own ward. The other 100,000 is for community commissioning. This is a corporate project at the moment. It's not a DGFirst one. In some ways, we were ahead of the game in mentioning community franchising, which is an older term, in our business plan, because we see that as one of the real issues for us going forward. Without wishing to get too deeply into the jargon of it, the corporate allocation of 100,000 is mainly to do with community co-commissioning and co-production rather than any of the other co-whatevers. Unlike another council which made a major sum available for community commissioning, we've decided that we need to get the basics right first. So corporately, we're working on the legal framework, the issues such as insurance and health and safety and the like, so that when we start the pilot projects, and they are pilots to see what the issues are, we'll be in a good state. So the plan is, roughly speaking, and it's at a very early stage, that last month, this month, the next month, we will be designing the framework for communities to engage in this process. Then we'll have 6 months of working, and then we'll do a review and analysis of what's going on. As I say, whilst it is almost certain to involve DGFirst, it isn't us that are leading on that. It is actually community and customer services and the corporate centre.
I'm just looking at page 5 of the business report, on the one that got handed out, and looking at the bottom table 3, the activities for building services, 14,422 repairs, 6,888 for Lordburn, 4,464 for council. Where was the other 3,070 repairs done?
It's likely to be Irvine Housing Association and other people for whom we do work.
Part of this is about looking at other things we might want in our business plan. I've got a couple of things I would quite like to see in here a little bit more expanded. One is, if you see it in 4.2 of our minutes, it was we agreed to receive an update on the proposed zero waste collection operations. That is coming up very soon. I just wonder how we're going to take that forward. And the other one, which I would like to see being progressed, would be the fault reporting, a more efficient way of doing it. I understand that is slightly held back by our ICT systems, but they should be there.
If we take the zero waste collection changes, at the time that this was originally prepared, those changes to the collection system hadn't been agreed, and we really didn't have any idea how that would impact on us. It will form a major project in the refreshed plan, and we would intend giving a presentation to members when we have a clear idea of exactly how this is going to work. We know the concept, but the detail of delivering that concept is still being worked out. On the fault reporting side, we have two current projects within the development and integration of ICT, which are street lighting, version 2 of our fault reporting system, and another one for pothole reporting. I think the Chair is really referring to the use of mobile computing, the use of apps to report and deal with defects and other incidents. Currently, we are moving as a department to mobile computing. Equally, the Council's ICT infrastructure is not yet ready to deliver that corporately, though members who may have sat on Policy and Resources Committee will remember the ICT asset class capital programme, and that includes funding over the next 2 years to put that infrastructure into place. That isn't to say that we will have to wait for 2 years to pass before we can do anything. We are already developing mobile applications in the area of gas engineering and electrical safety. So we are starting to move on that, but we're not in a position as a council to use publicly accessible systems.
Can I just ask, perhaps Kate could expand on how in her department it's working though with care home people?
Yes, Chair, thanks. As committee is aware, we brought a paper a few committees back explaining about the introduction of smartphone technology for home care. I'm pleased to know that, to inform members that that's going well. We're continuing to roll it out. We're now across the region into the Whithorn Port William teams. They started their training this week, and we will be running that out as quickly as possible. It is going extremely well. Once, like me, the carers get over the fear of new technology. So what we've actually decided to do is issue all the carers with their smartphones to get them used to using the smartphone itself and all it can do, and then we'll put them onto the schedule and the rota system. But it's actually proven pretty beneficial, and we can already see some small, quick efficiencies that's coming out of that, in the fact that it's responding quickly. We get the information in real time, and it links to all the systems in the back office that we can produce the reports and generate our performance.
If I could just add one comment. You may wonder why we're able to do it for carers and for gas fitters, but not for Joe Public. It's because we're able to use, if you like, private infrastructure, not the publicly accessible infrastructure. And in some cases, we're using the cloud, we're using the supplier's ICT to provide the service. So we can do it for discrete bits of work now, but we can't do it for publicly accessible systems. I hope that helps to explain.
Councillor Peacock.
Thank you, Chair. I have 4 small points where the Director would like to take them on at a time or all together. It's up to him. Okay. Firstly, on page 14 of the papers, the waste collection route review. The savings identified there is 242 for this year and the forthcoming financial years. Now, throughout this year, we've had reports that you've not been able to obtain those particular savings this year, although I appreciate you with savings in other departments, the budget came in. Are you confident that the forthcoming years you'll manage to hit that target?
No, that 242,000 was predicated on being able to reduce our refuse collection fleet by 2 vehicles and 2 crews. The practicalities of implementing the new optimised routes proved that we needed 1 extra to what we thought, so we were only able to release 1 crew and 1 RCV. So we will have to make efficiency savings throughout the rest of neighbourhood services to be able to cover that £121,000.
On the next page, page 15, it's more a comment rather than a question with regards to the road service. With the budget that you've had there and through the strategic partner in PH&E of £13 million, and only being able to surface 2% of the roads network and surface dress another 4.2%, that's quite concerning, really. I appreciate that's your budget and that's what you're able to do with that sort of money, but it's just quite concerning that that is all that we can sort of deliver on the system of the roads.
I will take it as a comment. I think I would also say that that budget includes a host of other things other than just surfacing. So it's grass cutting, it's harbours, it's car park management. So there's much more in that pot than just dealing with carriageways. And to be honest, surfacing is expensive.
Thank you. And on page 17, you identify there that the age profile is causing you concerns for future staffing requirements, which I totally understand. And you also mentioned in the report that you intend in using the likes of apprenticeships and graduate schemes and that to try and bring on future staffing levels. With bearing that in mind, using those particular schemes there over a long period of time, possibly 3-4 years to build up until those staff are therefore competent in their own requirements. So therefore, the staff that you are likely to be replacing with them in the future, those staff will still be in place at the time of the training of the new staff that you would like to bring in to cover that. There's going to be a sort of financial implication to the department on that. Are you quite happy that you will be able to cover that?
That's a deceptively simple question, and the answer is quite complicated. The short answer is probably mainly because under the current Modern Apprentice Plus scheme, we're not paying for the modern apprentices, and we're not paying for the Graduate Employment Experience Programme. So in the short term, yes, I have no concerns at all. Frequently through the business plan, there is reference to the need for workforce planning, and it's one of our disappointments that we have not been able to progress that, basically because we were trying to do the whole thing at once, and it's just too big and complicated. As a management team, we've looked at workforce planning, and we've decided to do it in a much more structured and cascading way. But one of the key elements of that workforce planning is not only succession planning, but the sustainability of the structure. That's why the 2 senior managers spoke about one of their key priorities is a structure that's fit for purpose and sustainable for the long term. So we're looking at that as a longer term project. But in the short term, yes, we can manage.
Finally, Chair, thank you. On page 18 of the papers there, in the partners, the delivery of service, you have down there that at the moment you have contracted with the Dumfries and Galloway Fire and Rescue Service. That has obviously changed, and are you still able to maintain that contract or for future years, or do you think that might be moving away?
Short term, I'll let Mr. Dempster speak to this because he's been much more detailed in the arrangements. In the short term, yes, we will continue to provide support to the new Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. I don't think their crystal balls will tell them what's happening in the future, and mine certainly doesn't. Ronnie, do you want to say a few words?
Thank you, Director. As it stands at this time, we have provided the Fire and Rescue Service with service level agreements to step into the new organisation, which will be for the provision of, for the want of a term, the same building services that the council provided previously when they were part of the council. Likewise for the maintenance of their vehicle fleet. There are some nuances within the vehicle side where they now wish to look and review at least once a year at their fleet out with Dumfries and Galloway, so they will take the vehicles away, but there's still some discussion going on that. The provision for these service level agreements, which are very, very close to being signed off through their both legal parties within the council and within the fire service, clearly set out that it is potentially under that agreement up to 18 months to 2 years before there would be any need for further review of this position, and whether that then goes down to providing a schedule of rates or, worst case scenario, looking at it on a competitive basis and to tender for that work. But at the moment, there is very much stability in the delivery of service to the fire, in particular across Dumfries and Galloway. The same process for the building maintenance is in place with the police service as well, and we still have some work to do with the joint bodies over the communication sides that we provide technical support with regards to airwaves and their control room communications. But there is nothing to suggest, the way we have drafted all these service level agreements, that we are in any difficulty in maintaining and keeping that work, and there is a time scale of at least, I would suggest, 2 years before we have to review that again.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Chair. Bill, I refer to page 13 of the refreshed plan. Down the bottom of the customer first bit, there's a bit in here about care and support services, holding regular service user and stakeholder engagement sessions. I think I'm kind of looking for some sort of reassurance from either you or Kate that your staff are being actively involved in the care plan revision or the people that they're actually looking after. And I think on top of that as well is, are these meetings being coordinated? Because sometimes we have 2 or 3 commissioners in the one house and have 3, 2, 3, 4 different meetings taking place with the same person, and does that place an undue burden on you? I'm actually thinking here in terms of what's coming in health and social care integration, where we need to get it all together. And I'd be interested in yours or Kate's view on that.
I think Kate's.
Just to reassure Councillor that under Care Inspect regulations, as you know, we need to do 6 monthly reviews of the client service user packages. However, on the initial, when the referral comes through regarding a service user from social work services, there is a plan put in place based on the care plan. There is the dialogue and the communication. I totally agree with what you're saying, Councillor, about there can be 2 or 3, 4 different agencies going into that service user's home, and that is part of the options we're looking forward as we're looking forward to looking to the integration process, etc. Because it can be, the word's not distressing I should be using, but it can be quite upsetting for the service user if they're having to deal with different points of contact. And as you probably know, Councillor, part of the strategy of setting up the hub in Dumfries and the pilot there, that there'll be one point of contact for the service user where they'll then be signposted to what's necessary, etc.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, thanks, Kate.
Councillor Driver.
Thanks, Chair. This is probably to Bill. Obviously, we're looking at this as a whole business plan Bill, and it's your remit to deliver that business plan. But all business plans has a certain amount of risk within it, and I just wanted to know what do you see? First of all, do you have the staff to deliver it? It probably goes along with the question that Councillor Peacock answered. And what are the showstoppers within this business plan? And maybe refer to the winter strategy, for instance. Have we still got the budget there for that to be delivered and things like that? But we need to mitigate against that risk in whatever way we can. But it is a business plan as such, and there will be some risk to that.
Thank you. It's a very good question. If I could direct you to page 16 of the business plan. When my management team originally drafted this, we saw there were three main issues for us, and we've tried to express them not in the doom and gloom bit, but in the positive side. We need to keep trading because the trading operations make a significant contribution to overheads. Delivering the winter service operations would be significantly more expensive if we didn't do trunk road work, for it as an example. We're also conscious that we need to continue to deliver business efficiencies in order to make our services affordable. The council is facing, as every other local authority, financial difficulties. In order to protect the delivery of services, we need to make them as efficient and as effective as possible. So that's the next risk, is that we don't do that and we spend money on processes rather than delivery. The final one we have in the last month managed to overcome, because one of the big problems that we faced as a management team of 3 was having enough time to develop the services and to put structures in place. I inherited an interim structure which was effectively what was left after a number of retirements and restructurings. We're now in a position to move forward and develop structures that are sustainable and fit for the future. So those were the 3 main risks. As part of the refresh, the departmental team will look at the main risks again. I think as a delivery organisation, we are perhaps fortunate in most of the risks have to be dealt with by our commissioning partners, because if we don't have enough money, then we can't deliver. So they have to manage, they have to deal with, if you like, the politics of what is to be delivered, and we just have to deliver it as effectively and efficiently as possible.
Yeah, but once you've said you're going to deliver it for the money that you've actually been given, then you've got to deliver it. So there might be some risks in that particular area.
If we move into what I might describe as operational risks, and basically we deal with those on a day-to-day basis. As issues come up, we either deal with them or we discuss them with the commissioning partners. We don't operate in isolation at all.
Leader?
I think the last question covered my point. It was to the fact that if within the commissions, financially, if there's no uplift, but there was legislation that came through that changed something we had to do, and there wasn't money coming from our partners, would there be issues with regard to anything in here that we couldn't deliver? Is there anything known that's coming up that, you know, if I sit in education, I'm going to be told that Jimmy didn't get his school lunch this week because DGFirst didn't deliver on that? That's the one. Is there anything in here that could come and sort of bite us on the proverbial?
I think at one point the Waste Scotland Regulations 2012 were in that position, but fortunately Planning, Housing and Environment Services Committee have agreed a funding package, and we are currently trying to work out whether we can deliver practically the service that has been asked for. But it's an exchange. We work with our commissioning partners as issues arise to adjust the targets, to modify what's done. And to be quite honest, Leader, if we absolutely do get to the bit where we can't deliver, then we stick our hands up and say, you've either got to stop doing this or give us some more money. And I suppose actually the snow event at the end of March is a classic example of that. The council established a severe weather reserve of £500,000, and the process was that as soon as we recognised that we were going to overspend on winter, then I asked the chair and vice chair for permission to access that funding, which was done on the Saturday morning. Both said yes with remarkable speed, and so we drew on that funding. Now, I think Charles will mention during his part of the presentation on the snow event what the likely costs were, but we're still working on those. As Kate said at the time, you couldn't wish for a better combination of circumstances, year end and a severe snow event at virtually the same time.
Mr. Driver?
Thanks, Chair. Let me in again. I'm just looking at the corporate indicators, and again, one of the issues is looking at percentage of days lost per employee through sickness absence. I'm just wondering what sort of things that you're doing at the moment, Bill, to try and reduce that.
Yes, it is a corporate indicator and a corporate target. We actively manage absence. We probably go further than any other department in actually looking at the causes of, and even yesterday when we were talking about this at our monthly DMT, we were looking at the high incidence of musculoskeletal injuries in the road service, which is an indicator that we probably need to refresh manual handling. There are some things that we can't do very much about. The example in the business plan was that of care and support services, where a combination of the ageing workforce and gender means that the rate of surgical absence is much higher than one would expect in, say, sport and leisure. So we look at the figures, we look at the causes, we follow the council's maximising attendance policy probably more effectively than anybody else, though I would say that, wouldn't I? We have a big push on one of the key maximising attendance issues, which is the return to work interview and the exploring why. And that message cascades right down through the services and to actual locality-based teams. I think one of the issues for us on the absence rates is that we have a couple of things where we're different to the rest of the council departments. We have what you might call mandatory absences, where if a catering assistant has a stomach bug, they're not allowed back into the kitchen for 24 hours or 48 hours. We're trying to do the analysis to present, this is what we could avoid, this is what we couldn't avoid for the future. At the moment, on a very quick analysis, it looks like that would reduce our figures by about 1%. It's still higher. But Ronnie commented yesterday in our DMT, yes, there's a difference between, shall we say, the chief exec service, who are office-based and aren't working outdoors, and most of our staff, particularly in roads and neighbourhood services, who are out in all weathers doing heavy physical labour. If I was pushed, I would say that we should have a different target, but that's not in my gift, though I do complain about once a year about it.
There's one of the other issues, of course, with the change programme that's going on, is some people are uncertain of what the future actually lies, and that could actually cause problems. So when you go through this business plan and look at this new structure in that, how long after today, for instance, are you going to be in a position where this is the structure for the future, that everybody knows exactly what they're doing? And I understand that's all part of the resource planning for the whole business plan, but that could have an effect on staff as well.
Yes, you're quite right. It does. Uncertainty is terrible for the staff. We have the concepts for the new structures. I have to say, care and support services and facilities management have been through a process of structural change, and given the non-advent of any new legislation, we should be okay for a while. Of the three services, support services is probably the most complicated because whilst we have a concept, there's an awful lot of work to do with staff. But we will engage with them and the joint trade unions in order to develop the structure. So by engaging with the staff, we should hopefully, if not reducing uncertainty, at least expanding understanding. At the other end of the scale, I think, is neighbourhood services, which is, whilst it's a complex service, the service delivery structure is much simpler, and we can move quite quickly on that. I'm tempted to say God and HR willing, but we will move as quickly as we can. Certainly, we should have all our structures in place by the end of this financial year.
Thanks, Chair. It's just moving on to what Archie said there. On page 8, you've got the wagon wheel there. And next to, you see there, next to other reasons, you've got stress is the major, seems to be the major cause of absence there. Like, as I say, you can understand the likes of the kitchens with viral infections and that. Like, do we know actually what's causing the stress, and are we doing anything to alleviate that?
I should be very good and not be facetious. It's dealing with service users that causes the stress in the vast point. As some of you may know, we're just about to undertake a biennial survey of stress amongst the workforce, and that will be reported to the Joint Consultative Group and the Joint Safety Committee later this year. So I'd hesitate to say what the current causes of what people think are stress. I know that a lot of people understand that the council is operating under financial constraints and they are concerned about the future of their jobs. We do our best to work that through with them. I really can't comment more than that, Councillor Martin.
To say it's not really that they're getting we're putting far too much pressure on them. We're having less staff or anything to do and doing more with less.
Without doing the survey, I can't answer that.
Right, just before we tidy this up, Councillor, okay, well, can I just do what Councillor Thompson was interested in, which was the existing and future structures. We have on page 3 of the new papers, and page 11 of the new papers, or page 12 and 20 of the papers that we had previous. The one on page 3 or page 12 is out of date.
It is now out of date, yes.
The ones on pages 11 or 20, that is, the existing is out of date?
Yes.
And so the future, and that is now, or is that next month, or is that, I don't know, can you just...
The structure that was shown there was what I and my management team were thinking of some 18 months ago. We have changed our view over the course of time and with some advice from the Chief Exec. So that's why that particular chart is highlighted in the coloured copy, because we will be revising that.
Well, I think what would be quite good for members of the committee would be to see an up-to-date one with names as far down as you can go, because I think that's what is very useful to us, and then we know who we're dealing with and who's in what position.
Certainly. The new business plan will have names down to service manager, where those have been appointed by the time we give you the chart, and we should be in a position to know that. But certainly I can give members a new version of figure 3, which shows the new structure, but some of the names will be to be confirmed because we have a matching and recruitment process to go through.
So will we get that in June or August, or what?
We should have that in June. As I say, God and HR willing.
Thanks, Chair. Bill, I'm not sure if it's your Kate will have to answer this one again. We call it home care or care support services, whatever you want to call it. We know that the service is high quality, and we know that the number of external complaints are remarkably low. Right, what I was going to ask you here is, you're quite rightly doing service reviews all the way through here, and it's highlighted as work in progress. What happens if your review comes into conflict with the Commissioner's review? How do you sort that out without making the person in the middle, the pig in the middle sort of thing?
I'll answer that. Kate might be far too diplomatic. We don't do these reviews in isolation. We spend an awful lot of time talking to our commissioning partners. We tend to do the business efficiency elements ourselves because if we can, for example, make efficiency savings in the delivery of home care, then that's passed on to the Commissioner as almost a bonus. But we can't do service reviews in isolation. They have to be done with input from the Commissioner. When we're looking at, for example, how we maintain traffic calming features, that's an internal thing and we wouldn't involve the Commissioner. But if we're doing something where the way in which we provide service, then we would involve the commissioning partner, particularly in social work services.
Councillor Yen?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I would like to congratulate the Director and his team for bring this business plan together. But as you know, hope you will appreciate that as councillors, we still have to have these scrutinized roles on all of our responsibilities. I have 4 points I would like to raise. I hope you don't mind. Thank you. Now, on page 15, school meals.
And are you using the new business plan or the one in our papers?
The old one, please, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
I have a daughter who's now in primary 4. She's been taking school meals since P1, and she's been keeping complaining that she's getting brown broccoli, well cooked, and brown green peas. Should be green peas, but it's brown peas. So she's not taking many of them, but I still have to force them. You have to take it up. So I wonder if you would make some implementation on this, and that would encourage children would take up proper green vegetables.
I think if Kate could speak to you afterwards, then we'll take that issue up, because I can see Kate frowning. That shouldn't be happening. So if we can take that one after the meeting, that would be good.
Thank you very much. Point 2 is on page 16, winter service. I wonder if DGFirst ever in a position of short of supply of the equipment. Thanks.
The short answer is no.
Thank you. On page 22, partnership working. As you're now aware, Scotland Transurf is now getting a new contract from Transport Scotland. How is the working relationship with DGFirst just now?
It's actually very good. I'll ask Ronnie, because he's been dealing with the arrangements. So, in fact, you have on item 5, we're covering that, I've just remembered. So if we could take that as part of that discussion. Okay.
Thank you. On page 24, promoting equality. I was just wondering if the statistic figures of the equality monitoring form, from the equality monitoring form, can it be implemented in the workforce data report? Thank you.
That one has a very simple answer. It's not a terribly helpful one, but the current answer is no, because not our HR system, but the corporate HR system doesn't necessarily hold all of that data, though it is one of the things that we collectively wish to move towards. So you will see it at some point, but not just yet, because our systems can't generate that information. And in some of the protected characteristics, members of staff can actually refuse to have that recorded. So we will always have a certain blurring at the edges. That will come. We can't do it at the moment.
Wonder members, if you'd like to do the delivering improvement, if there's anything on that you'd like to highlight. I would just like to, one thing I would like to bring up or ask about is the waiting and appointment of a procurement manager, because that was quite an important part of our business plan.
Yes, at the time of writing the business plan, we had envisaged submitting a change fund bid for the appointment of a procurement manager to deliver procurement efficiencies within the department. Strangely, it appeared that other departments had the same idea, and so a corporate change fund bid was submitted to appoint 3 procurement officers, one of whom will be dedicated to DGFirst. Policy and Resources Committee made that decision in February, and the recruitment process has, I understand, started. So we had hoped to be in a position 6-7 months ago to have a procurement officer, but we were overtaken by corporate events, and we should have one during this financial year.
Is there anything anybody would like to bring up on the delivering improvement, particularly? In that case, I think perhaps we could just go to the recommendations. Do we need recommendations? Yeah, good. Thank you very much. So that takes us on now to item 5, and in addition to the ones that are in this report to be given this morning, I have also asked that Mr. Clemmy will give us an update on the A708 and the erosion there. So I think that would be useful to know how that's progressing. I think it sounds as though it's going very well, but perhaps there's other things we need to know about the A708. So we'll just go forward with these operational updates, and I'll let you do that, Mr. Barker.
Thank you, Chair. The first update is a presentation on the Short-Term Augmented Response Service, or STARS, which is a joint service with the NHS and Ross McGaw, who is the Acting Service Manager, STARS. He's a council employee but paid for by the NHS, and Wendy Thompson, whose title I can't remember. So Wendy, you'll have to introduce yourself.
I'm saying I'm the Occupational Therapy Development Facilitator from STARS, and I'm from NHS.
We were hoping to have a slide there as well, and as Bill's done the introductions there. Let me see.
Janet, it's not coming up on the screen.
Great. That's
hit that one.
Okay. Super. That's far better than looking at me, I can assure you. Just to say, as Bill said, no, it's a jointly funded service that's between the Council and NHS Dumfries and Galloway. We thought it'd be useful to give you a brief overview of the history and the current makeup of the service just now. STARS was originally an NHS-run service born out of what was the Joint Futures Agenda, and it had very broad parameters that it operated under, and its key purposes were identified as being preventing unnecessary hospital admission, supporting early hospital discharge, short-term intensive enablement in rapid response, and having a rapid response service. As I say, they're all very broad in terms of intermediate care. In 2008, there was a care at home review done, quite a comprehensive review, and at that point it was identified that the Council's home care service, in-house service, care and support services would focus on developing a reablement service as one of its strands. and the viability of working with the NHS and STARS was identified at that point, and we should explore that. So in 2009, we set up a very small test of change pilot. We had 5, I'll say, willing volunteers in the West that moved from the CAS service to work in STARS, and that worked very well. So over the next few years, we incrementally moved staff across to the point where we actually transferred across 48 frontline staff to work with the existing 15 staff within the NHS at that point. It wasn't as straightforward as it maybe would appear to be. Between home care and reablement, there's huge differences in what the jobs actually entail. Home care, it's quite specified. As was touched on earlier on, there is a care plan identified which tells people what to do when they go into a home, and it is very much doing for people when you're in there. Reablement itself is actually doing with, which I'll come on to later on. So there was quite a lot of work to be done there in terms of the transition for the staff. It wasn't just to move them into that post and it would work. So we had a training plan put in place. Fortunately, we had Wendy Thompson here, who had created a training plan, which I'm pleased to say has now been accredited nationally for this as well. So we're fortunate in Dumfries that we've actually got a training plan that nobody else in the country actually had in terms of moving it on to reablement. I'll let Wendy speak about how the structure sits now, if you want.
October last year, our service manager post became available, and Ross actually applied for it. We'd been working secondment together for about 12 months prior to that. So Ross was successful, and that brought about opportunity for great changes in STARS and what we were able to deliver. I'm the senior practitioner in occupational therapy, but also develop and deliver training for unregulated and unregistered staff. I have 3 senior charge nurse colleagues, and we're all NHS. There's 2 support supervisors that Ross had implemented in the new structure. They are local authority or council. 2 administrators, they're a mix, and we've got 35 full-time equivalent health and social care support workers, 75%, 25% split within that staff group.
I think it's important to note at that point that we don't always have that staff on at any point in time because the staff's work shifts. That's covering the whole region, that we've got that staffing complement to cover the whole region, and at best we've only got half of that staffing complement on at any point in time. I've put up there just a wee picture because, as alluded to earlier, it's been a time of great transition for the service. The operating criteria for STARS previously was very broad, and to be honest, it was becoming quite unsustainable because it became the catch-all for everything. Things that didn't fit into neat little boxes for health or social care were referred to STARS. So it was becoming very difficult to manage. What we are looking to do now is to move away from that and look towards being part of the intermediate care service in terms of developing the reablement service, which will allow us to assess and review people. Working on from what was touched on earlier on as well, we will be looking to work with partners within this, and it's key to what we do. If you look at the picture there, integration was hard enough, to be honest, in terms of trying to link up DGFirst and the health service. That was a challenge in itself. I think where we describe ourselves on that front is we're either the guinea pigs or the pioneers, depending on what sort of mood we're in that day. But it's been quite challenging in itself to get that done, to pull the two together. We've utilised the CM2000 system that Kate touched on earlier on. That's the real-time monitoring system. That will allow us to do scheduling and rota work a lot better as well. And we too will be moving on to the handheld technology. Wendy's been working on a module with that as well, whereby we'll have an outcome module within that for the individual's needs. So it won't just be measuring the outputs, it'll be measuring the outcomes. And again, we don't think there's anything else like that in the country just now. Nobody's actually captured that sort of information. So it's quite key that we get that done. The PYF funding, we've also had to integrate with because there's a lot of strands coming out of that just now. We've had to link in and work with a lot of agencies all at the same time. So as well as the integration with ourselves, we're now integrate. We've got 2 senior charge nurse staff within the hub as well. So they're working with a single point of contact with the test of change. And with social work, on the 1st of April, there's been 3 care coordinators actually put into place to work with ourselves. And again, touching on what you said earlier on, that will be to actually ensure that people are seen at the same time, not people coming at different points in time, and hopefully we'll get a real service delivery work ethic there that will work really well. It should really make service user experience a lot better as well, and we can involve in friends, families and carers as appropriate as well. We've deliberately stayed away from a definition for reablement because we're actually looking to relaunch it entirely. In terms of what STARS has been before, it's been a number of different things, as I said, so we think we need to actually relaunch it and actually spell out to people what we actually do. But in the broadest sense of it, what reablement does, it gives service users an opportunity over a 6-week period to basically optimise their potential to learn, or it may be relearn, individual skills for independent living. Where full independence is not achievable, STARS will work with social work departments or other agencies to see what other support or care is out there, and Wendy will speak to those bits at the bottom.
Sorry, building what Ross said there, we've got kind of informal relationships with the occupational therapists in health and in the local authority that we can pull on that as a resource as well to help optimise therapy and assessment review needs, and a hot desk in the hub as well. We've developed relations with the College of Scotland. They were formerly Scotland's colleges, just been renamed and amalgamated down to about 13 colleges. And they've supported us throughout this and found funding to go through the Scottish Qualification Authority and develop our in-house training module into the first National Progression Award, Health and Social Care Promoting Reablement. So that's at a level 6 for unregulated staff, and that allows them to have a career pathway into your typical HNCs, HNDs and degrees. From that, so the idea of that is to upskill the staff. They're not just doing one key job anymore. They're doing 2 or 3 different things, a little bit of occupational therapy, a little bit of physio, speech and language, podiatry and dietetics, but at a certain assured level that we can evidence. And then they really are at eyes and ears. They can come back and feed the rest of the professions about what's needed for assessment review. We're building relations with the third sector, particularly just now, housing, WRBS, hospital from home, and looking towards developing potential within telecare, telehealth. We've put a proposal forward that we could really be trusted assessors out there providing technology solutions where traditionally somebody might have gone and done that, and that, as we cover the whole region, that would be an appropriate route for us as well to be doing that.
I think just to comment, going back to the proper integration parts of it, I think the things that we've found challenging and the learning points for ourselves have been the fact that we're working with different organisations. I mean, the HR departments obviously hold quite different positions and different policy and procedures at times, certainly with regard to different approaches to post terms and conditions has been a bit of a challenge for us recently. Also in regard to IT, we're required to populate 2 different systems, one in the NHS, one in the council, and also the CM2000 system, and the systems are not compatible, which is somewhat challenging again. The finance departments operate in 2 different ways as well. The NHS operates a period by period or a year-to-date analysis, whereby the council does an out-turn monitoring system. So basically I'm sitting just now with 2 budgets for the same service, which is somewhat difficult at times. And finally, the trade unions have to negotiate with 2 different lots of trade unions, who I would comment probably are in 2 different parts on the journey towards full integration. So it's been quite a challenge on that. So I think that's probably the learning curves from us from doing the integration side of it. I'll pass it on to Wendy very quickly to run through some of the other issues we face.
This, in some ways, was demonstrating the referral sources to STARS, but while working on this, on a health system, I relayed it across to Ross, on a council system, and it scrambled everything for us. So even small things like that, just trying to demonstrate where our referral sources came from, took a lot longer than it should have. The idea of this slide, just to let you know, and this is since January to April, and there's about 458 service users on this slide, and the different sources that we get them from. Overall, about 25 generally. We're looking to try and simplify that down, because really we get about 5 key professions and about 9 key sources. So we're doing a bit of work on trying to integrate how we record and report on that. I think that's the main points I wanted to say about that one.
I think, finally, I think there's what Wendy's saying, there's clear evidence to show that reablement is very effective in reducing the ongoing care needs of individuals. And obviously, in light of the current and projected demographics and the pressure on the social work budgets just now, it's really key and fundamental that we make reablement work. Rather, I mean, with regards to sort of care and all the bits surrounding care, it is something that's quite subjective. But what we're trying to do is make it a little bit more scientific. This is one of the very, very brief reports that we've actually run off that runs off automatically for us. And in terms of the service user, it would show where somebody started off their journey, how many hours a week or how many visits they were getting per week, because it can vary as well, and how hopefully by the end of that we'll be able to demonstrate how we've reduced their ongoing care needs, so that there's not as much of a demand then placed on social work, and it's also better for the individual as well. So that the left side of the report there, the actual hours and the visits by week, would show the actual outputs and how we've hopefully reduced. Again, if we've not reduced them, we'll make sure it's appropriate and that people get the appropriate care or support thereafter. And I'll let Wendy speak to the right-hand side of it.
The right-hand side's one of the outcomes that we're looking to report on, and the outcomes we're really keen are something that can be transferred nationally and that have meaning. So we've been liaising with the Joint Improvement Team. They've got their indicator of relative need, the iron, which was based on the single shared assessment. It's not really sensitive enough to pick up the differences in reablement. It's very good at acute, but not reablement. So we approached them and asked if they would look at refining and reviewing it. And we're on that active working group for that. It really is a part of the functional assessment where somebody is able to take part in reporting what they think they're able to do, but also what we would assess them as able to do. They come up with a grade at the start, if you like, on an algorithm, and at the end they're rescored. And locally, we've also put an interpretation onto that as an impact improvement for them. So we're doing a lot of work with Fife and Lothian, and to say the Joint Improvement Team trying to refine that. Along with that, we're also working on using the MAYOR, which is a satisfaction survey that the Department of Health approve, to see, yes, that's what we assessed, but what did the service users view of that, and what was their priorities, and are we taking full consideration of that into their goals? So we can then refine the goals. And we're also working with the care strategy on self-assessment for carers, trying to pull all three together, so we actually have a realistic picture that's sustainable.
And I think that's about us.
Can I just ask you on, and thank you very much, it's very interesting, on this last one, is that about the average for the number of service users who actually need 6 weeks? I mean, is that typical?
Well, nationally, what they've found is that to optimise someone's reablement ability is somewhere between, could be 6 to 12 weeks, could be 6 to 8 weeks. It's just generally what they've found is that's where somebody will optimise if you give them intensive assessment review.
I think just to add on to that, the difficulty we are having just now is not being able to move people on when there's an identified need. So we might assess at 3 weeks that this person is going to need ongoing care, and we can quite clearly identify at that point what they will need. But there are problems in the provision of that just now within the sector. So that's for us to continue to be effective, we need to be able to speed up the throughput, and hopefully by introducing the care coordinators, we'll be able to speed that part up a little bit.
Councillor Barbara?
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm looking at the SQA colleges Scotland and that part of things, because I mean I've dealt with SQA before, and they sometimes can be very difficult to get outputs from with regard training and qualifications of that particular. How did you find that relationship when you're dealing with something that's really medically or at least home care based, when they will already have, I'm sure, a qualification for home carers, and then you're trying to bring this new, and they tend not to like people playing about with their modules and things like that.
Absolutely. It took, I started working on that in about 2008, and it was published last year. So absolutely agree with you. And what they also do is they put a panel together. Ross was one of the people on the panel, and it was covering everything from health. SSC was there. Everybody was really there, and they really scrutinise everything, and they also look at their raft of exams to see, does this already exist but in a different form? And it's only if they can evidence that this actually doesn't exist that they will go ahead and make it a qualification. And what they found was that the practical aspects of reablement and the multi-skilling doesn't exist as a qualification. That, you know, we want you qualified as a home carer or an OT or a physio, but multi-skilling somebody doesn't exist.
Kate, do you have anything from your perspective you want to add?
Just to say, I hope committee can recognise the work that we've actually put into taking the STARS service forward since it came across in October. I would just like to congratulate Ross and Wendy for the great partnership working that they actually demonstrate, and they both show, both in DGFirst and out when they're supporting the service. That's probably a special thank you to Wendy, because she's brought a lot of skills to me and to Ross, although he'll not admit it, from the NH side too. And I know in their presentation they spoke about the challenges about IT, but we're overcoming them. Nothing that we're facing at the moment are we saying we can't do. We have this can-do approach, and both these two officers here are demonstrating that from the health. And as we know, we've got the future integration coming forward, and we are hoping that our goals and our targets and our journey will make STARS and CAS, because we have a wider resource, fit for purpose for that integration. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to echo what Kate just said there. And I think it's widely recognised the work that STARS actually do and the value of it. There was a couple of things I was wanting to ask, and then a general question, which I'll go first. And with Bill's leave, I've actually put into train a come and see session for social work in Irish Street for the local, which has not been published yet, but that will be coming. And I'm actually wondering, given the complexity of what you do, if there's some way that we could visit you, see how you work, and put things into place if we were of a mind to do so. And I'm also worried, of course, we didn't have a whole 20 or 30 people coming at once, and also worried we didn't have one or two trickling through the door. So that was a sort of general question, is that doable? The two specific things were about SSC registration for some of your care workers. Do they require SSC registration? And does the new qualification that you're talking to meet the needs of SSC registration? And the third question, I'll just give you the three in the bat of. Do we have any admission rates in hospital after STARS have finished? So if you work with somebody for 6 weeks, how long sometimes, have we any information about how long it can be before someone goes back? Rather than extend your input for 2 or 3 weeks, which would be a much cheaper option and better option for everyone, do we sort of stick rigidly at the 6 week, and then a couple of weeks later they're back in the hospital again, costing thousands of pounds a day, and not in the safest place they could be in?
I'll pick up on the first part, and I'll let Wayne talk about the second part. In terms of the open day and people coming to see that, there's been bits of that done already through the hub, and there's supposed to be shadowing done. So locally, that's sort of happening in Dumfries itself. the care coordinators themselves having come across to work within the service and work with the workers, it's been really, really eye-opening, and it's a sort of, I think we're at the storming and forming bit just now. There's a bit aggressive at the moment in bits, but it's good. And I think that what's really come out of that is it's shown to social work how much stars actually do, and where there possibly is areas of duplication, where there are possible gaps. So certainly welcome that. Definitely think it'd be a good idea. I think it's been good. Any experience we've had that so far has been really good. With regard to the SSSC, at the moment we don't have to be registered, although we were at a presentation in Edinburgh last year when they spoke about how they were actually going to view and look towards actually registering integrated services. We've cleared it up with them locally. Karen Fraser, the local manager, has said there is no need for stars to be registered at the moment. Because it's under a health lead at the moment, I think it will come. There's no doubt about it, it will come. I just don't think the SSSC know how they're going to do it for integrated services yet, because they'll be stepping on the toes of health professionals. So there's something coming, definitely. We are ready for that. The action plan we've got ready because of my experience within CAS. We're quite experienced in what the SSSC were looking for, what the care inspector were looking for. So we've got that factored in for development plans. Anything we're doing just now has got that in mind. We're even writing it to that. So thinking of the national care standards, for instance, we're using that in all the things we're doing just now. So we're ready for it and don't have to redo it when that actually comes to us. Just a little bit going about the readmission side of it, but there is actually something getting done just now through one of the PYF strands in terms of measuring when somebody leaves hospital. Is that actually them discharged? Because in hospital terms, that would have been them discharged at that point. However, that wasn't taking account of stars and what the stars were doing. So is that person actually properly discharged at that point? So there's a bit of work getting done on that just now. And I'll let Wendy speak about the graduate building post.
Back to your point about regulation, as far as health care support workers go, they just need to be assured through 12 mandated induction standards, and we I'm one of the quality assurers for that, and we audit twice a year actually, we audit a certain batch of the evidence that they must have. As far as SSSC goes, and council social care support workers, because we talk about our health and social care support workers because they're integrated, but they do need to be regulated, or they're working towards, and the date keeps slipping. It was 2015, it looks like now 2020, but SSS have been fairly rigid about being an SVQ too. When we were developing the qualification, we kind of argued that yes, that'll evidence what you can do here and now, because that's what VQs do. But the NPA doesn't do that. It demonstrates on the practical side of what you can do, but it also asks you to show new knowledge and learning, and a VQ is not about new knowledge and learning. So we felt that the NPA was a stronger qualification for that, but SSSC wouldn't move on it. So what we did as a compromise is built 2 SVQs within the new qualification. So if somebody does the NPA and reablement, they will have a third of their SVQ. Which we thought was contributing towards it, at least as a compromise. As far as your point about discharges, readmissions, we're kind of keen to start getting people to understand that although we say 6 weeks, we'll maybe say it less and less, short term, because if somebody does look like they've got potential, yes, of course we would keep them on, and to optimise that potential. If somebody looked like they were at risk, a UTI, potentially readmission, of course we'd keep them on and we'd get them their prescription and keep them in the community. As far as what happens to people when they leave stars, we did have a graduate for 6 months. It was a huge task because she had 4 strands, but one of those strands was to look at what was happening at 3 months post-discharge to service users that had left us. And all of them, we rescored them on the iron. And all of the ones that we managed to get to were either as we had left them and were optimised and seemed to be plateauing managing. They never identified any new problems or difficulties, and their satisfaction survey still came out as high as it had been. But some of them were actually coming out more able, so they'd still gone on to regain further independence since we'd left them. It's a piece of work that needs done, but it's enormous. The only other point would say is that most of the staff that we have their SVQs.
Councillor Leader.
It's with regard to the referrals. It seemed funny that DGRI has one of the smaller numbers of referrals. Now, is it just a case of the ones from social work are based in DGRI and therefore they're coming out there? Just the way it read on the paper, I would have thought the idea for STARS was to actually get, the old time phrase was bed blocking down. I think it's delayed discharge. I'm told I'm not allowed to call it bed blocking. One of the things from my other side as being on the health board is that we do note that there are one or two more cases of delayed discharge coming through, and there are one or two cases of readmissions coming through, and it seemed to be slightly increasing. Now, I think it was Ross that mentioned that there's issues with the capacity out there in care providers to actually take them out the STAR system and move them on to the care package that they require. Is there something we as a committee can do, or should we be referring back to Policy and Resources, Full Council or the Health Board, where we need to actually address something there so that we can take the person, put in the short-term response service and then move them on to that care package? What do we need to do to make sure that that process is better?
I think, to be honest, I think the care coordinators that are working within social work just now, they're going to work with the STAR service. They had advertised for 6, but they managed to be able to get 3 posts backfilled through PYF monies. So what they've done there, that'll be a real gauge for us whether we can actually move people through quicker. Is there an opportunity with early identification? Because what's happened previously, people were staying on the books for 6 weeks because we would maybe taken 3 weeks to actually refer to somebody. It was referring to a team as opposed to an individual to actually get somebody moved on. So, and then the existing problem, as we say, of issues with the home care provision in certain areas as well. So it's not all the same right across the board, but certainly over the last 6 months, I would say it's been very difficult to get actual home care provision in a number of areas. We're hopeful that, as I say, the throughput will speed up. That will identify that. Whether there needs to be something else then done about provision would be more for the social work angle of it. But certainly this, from the internal process for us, this will identify for us where the blockages are. Certainly, I mean, there is a heat target, obviously, from the hospital side to get 0% delayed discharge, and that's why the PYF strand is in there to actually measure whether they're getting 0% discharge, but in actual fact, is it just coming to us quicker? And we're actually taking that on, so that's a bit of the fear that we'll actually catch a bit of the burden for that. So we're looking to spell out a bit more clearly what we do. As I say, there's been a number of things, and if people are creative in the way they write it, it would sit under the existing criteria quite easily. That would get passed on to us. So we're looking to refine that a lot more, because as care's going on, the intermediate care, there's a number of strands to it, and we're looking to be the enablement strand of that, and not, as I say, the singing and dancing catch-all, as has been seen previously. The other bit about people going back into hospital, we've only captured that data in terms of where the referrals have come from recently, and it is showing a number of different changes from Wigton. It's come a whole entirely different from Mandale and Estill. A lot more community hospitals used in Wigton than there are in other parts of the region. You're quite right, the hospital one's there. There's a DGRI and social work one. Depending on what people put on the referral form, there could be, not duplication, but certainly they could be under the wrong title there. But what we need to make sure with the people coming back in again, are they presenting with the same issues? It's not just the same person coming back in, but are they presenting with an entirely new range of issues, or are they coming back? And so far, the ones we did find through the graduate study was that the ones that we'd identified that were completely re-abled at that point to their optimum level, they were certainly sustainable. So, as I say, it's the wording of how it's the same person back in, but what are they coming back in with?
Last word.
Well, thanks, Chair. I'm looking at an opportunity here rather as anything else. Not being a geek in any way whatsoever, And I've been involved with the Putting You First with the telecare side of things, especially at the Thomas Hope Hospital. And we've talked earlier on about these handheld devices that used to be called phones. Anyway, and there's obviously Skype and things like that nowadays that you can actually get on telephones. I'm sure I'm told I wouldn't know how to use them. But I'm just wondering if there was an opportunity for those clients that were homebound, for instance, to have a form of consultation over that type of a device, whatever you want to call it.
We've actually met with Telecare already, and we were due to meet them on Friday, but unfortunately the meeting was cancelled at short notice, so we're hoping to give you a bit more information on what we look to do with that. The meeting's been rescheduled again for the middle of May. As Wendy touched on, we're looking to try and see if we could become trusted assessors at that point in time. It's a good point in time when there's been maybe a bit of crisis or something like that, that we would step in and put these things in place. And again, working with a care coordinator is something we will look at. We need to get the further meetings with Telecare to see how they're going to take it forward. There's also telehealth, which will forward to you.
I worked in a different area to Dumfries previously, where I did assess for telecare, so it makes sense that we would. But we had discussions not only about the consultation, but the signposting, the community support and community resilience, that if people use technology like that and they're homebound, there's examples in the Highlands and Islands where people have set up, instead of a lunch group, they have a group that's almost a Skype group, and they have different things that they do, but it actually creates that well-being that stops people reporting necessarily to their GP for other reasons, that maybe just loneliness.
Very last comment, please, Andy, and then we'll move on.
Yes, I think you're right, Chair, because I'm also thinking that this presentation maybe go to social work at some time in the very near future, where we can actually ask them some social work questions. Because my first question really was, where do you get social work input? Because I noticed from your staffing structure you don't have a social worker on your team. And secondly, are you being asked to contribute into the restructuring of the social work department, and through that the integration of health and social care? And lastly but no means least, I appreciate Putting You First is high profile in the NHS particularly, but it's a pilot in 3 small areas, and doesn't venture west to Cargan Bridge. So I would be a bit wary of the experiences drawn from PYF as being the be-all and end-all. I think that's a sort of health warning that would come from me. But obviously, still a lesson to be learned. So I think my basic question here, Bill, is can we put this to social work? I think it would be a good idea. And 2, are your staff being included in the restructuring process and in the work streams towards the integration of health and social care is my direct question.
I'm sure we can do a similar presentation to Social Work Services Committee,
Yep.
and I'll let Kate speak to the second part because she's the one that's involved.
The quick answer is yes, we are involved in the restructuring or whatever of social work at the moment. We have close contacts. I don't have, as Ross said, we've got the care coordinators, although they're dedicated to STARS, they sit within social work. We have our, I think it's 2 monthly or 3 monthly strategy update monitoring meetings with commissioning and social work and NHS colleagues. So we are involved, and I think it would be fair to say we're getting the opportunity to be greater involved in the process, and especially with integration. We have the resource within CAS and within STARS going forward for adult services.
I'm suitably reassured, thank you.
Well, thanks for that. Right, I'd like to thank you both very much for coming this morning. It's very interesting, and I would expect that we will have an update on STARS on a regular basis. I don't think it's once a year or something. I don't know, whatever you would feel appropriate, but I think it's something we need to get up to date with. It's very interesting, it's very important. So, thank you very much, Wendy and Ross. Now, next one is we have progress with the development of a joint venture with Lawburn Housing Association, and that is you, Mr. Dempster, I think.
Thank you very much, Chair. We thought it was appropriate just to keep members of our committee advised as to where we are with the progress with regards to the LLP with Lawburn Housing. We continue to work with Lawburn on a day-to-day basis, continue to maintaining their properties as we have done for some years. Myself, we've been meeting with, I've been meeting with the Lawburn management team to progress this, and the Chief Executive, myself, met with Lawburn Housing Association and the Housing Regulator back in January to discuss the progress and to come up with a more streamlined or definitive timeline with regards to the current issues and opportunities associated with the LLP. In short, the key dates, I think it's worth knowing that Lawburn Housing Association are now taking independent legal advice with regards to the formation of the LLP. This was to ensure that there was no conflict of interest between the council and Lawburn. They are estimating that that will be fully completed by the latter part of June this year. They are also, again, in line with good financial practice, are taking their own independent financial advice and preparing their terms of reference. And again, that is going to be concluded by August of this year. Within that same time, their committee will be following through the due diligence process. I think it's fair that we are now heading towards the back end of the year for all the elements to be pulled together with regards to the LLP, and it would, I would suggest, be more prudent rather than to introduce a limited liability partnership organisation 2/3 of the way through a financial year. I would think heading towards commencement of the LLP from the 1st of April 2014 would be more appropriate. Just on the basis, so members are aware, our annual performance figures and the performance relating to the partnership arrangement that we have just now with Lawburn remains exceedingly high, and we are continuing to exceed the levels of target that they are setting, and they have some fairly high target figures for their customer satisfaction, emergency call-out, urgent works and routine works. And I think it's fair to say, and credit to all the guys and ladies that are within the team, the performance that we are hitting is 98, 99%, and with emergencies, 100% of all calls. So again, this is one of the key drivers with the Lawburn board to take this forward. So that's our current position. I'm more than happy, and I'll keep the director appraised of where we are, and we will give you regular updates as we move towards these timelines. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Any questions? Councillor Driver?
Maybe just the one, Chair. I'm just maybe Ronnie can give us advice if there's anything that is required from this committee that might help the director and yourself go forward with Lawburn onto this LLP.
I don't think it's any one specific. I think the support that this committee gives to the process of taking forward the LLP based around the performance and the quality that is being delivered to the tenants of Lawburn Housing is the paramount part of just ensuring that we have that support. And it's clear from the other housing association that is now that we have retendered their work and have been successful. They can see the benefits as well with urban housing. So I think it's having the confidence and support from this committee that our committee and the Lawburn committee are both singing, for the want of a term, off the same hymn sheet.
Leader?
The performance that we have against the target set by Lawburn, I would say we're doing exceptionally well. Does that have any detrimental effect on other contracts that we have, whereby to maintain those levels, we're maybe, right, well, we could slip to 80% on internal work in the council or something like that.
Chair, through you, no, it is a very different process, perhaps looking at the potential issues of conflict with other works such as in roads and the trunk road side. This is very much down to having a dedicated team of people that are delivering that service that can then link into other activities that we have in our books with regards to the building services. So the simple answer, Leader, is no, it doesn't have any impact.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Just a couple of points for clarity. You're saying just now that Lorburn Housing Association is looking for some kind of legal advice. Can you explain what that is?
Through you again, Chair. Basically, when we, for the want of a term, floated this suggestion to Lorburn Housing, there was a feeling that the legal advice with regards to setting up the legal entity of the business could have been looked at by one party, whether that be the council or Lorburn. We felt that it would be more prudent to ensure, as part of the due diligence process, that they don't specifically take our legal advice from the council's legal team about how this organisation, this company should be set up. They should have their own legal viewpoint so that their board is looking at this as in a correct manner that is not being driven by one side or the other. It's very much about the legal advice is how the company is to be set up, what the terms of reference are, and what is fair and appropriate for both parties.
Just to follow up on that, I think you indicated that they would complete that process around June of this year. Is that correct?
Again, Chair, they have advised us that they have gone to tender to identify an appropriate legal firm, and the date is being indicated as being completed by the end of June.
Yeah, and finally, you would hope that that agreement would be in place by the end of this year. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair. We'd anticipate that the want of a term, the papers will be in a position to be duly signed, and as I say, I think it would be more appropriate that we commence it from the first of a new financial year rather than trying to implement something 2/3 of the way through. And I think Lorburn would see that as beneficial to themselves as well, rather than having to overcomplicate the finance and monitoring process.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dempster. Next one we have is to do with the snow event, 22nd of March and 26th and onwards, and also we will have Kate for that, and it's now Charles?
Kate, Charles and Fraser.
Kate, Charles and Fraser. So please come forward, and I think we need to know how it went, why it went so well, cost, damage, all those sort of things. Implications on our budget, which was meant to be breaking even, which I assume now will not. But
as you might expect, DGFirst provided a range of services during the snow event beyond those which you might expect. We haven't been able to bring speakers from all parts of the organisation to speak about them, but Kate will start off with care and facilities management. We'll go on to Fraser, I think, and then Charles, and then Kate will say a few words about the overall response at the end.
Thank you, Chair. I make no apologies, committee. You're getting a lot of my world today, aren't you? Bill asked for a quick update on the world of facilities management from the 22nd to the 25th of March. I think for facilities management, our world actually started about 9 o'clock on the Friday morning when the snow first began to fall, and that was issues with Meals and Wheels. Just the volunteers not willing to go out. So we brought in our winter plan, and we now, thanks to this committee, we've managed to purchase the 4x4 vehicles. So we set up our management team to deliver meals where we could, but we also relayed with social work services. So the next slide is just basically, this is what we, or our world was that day. I must admit, about 1 o'clock on the Friday, being stuck in snow at the Pulnure Strait for an hour was quite a scary experience, when really my task and my service manager, Al Mawson, as you know, was to go and set up rest centres and emergency catering, but we made it. So really from a facilities management point of view and from the CAS point of view, what came to be invaluable was the work through this committee with the 4x4 vehicles, and the work of my teams on our winter plan got us through that weekend. It was totally invaluable. Simple things, members having a charger for the mobile phone in the vehicles when we had no power, etc., etc. To, from the catering side, we have garage stores. It was key. The local purchasing power through supermarkets, as you can guess, just was not as effective as possibly it could be, and we'll look at that again because everybody had bought the bread and everything else off the shelves. Garage stores proved invaluable because we have our emergency stock there. About October each year, we actually send to strategically placed kitchens winter food emergency supplies that we can pull on. So as I say, the morning kind of started on the Friday about 9 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 1:30, stuck in the E75 as it was getting brighter and brighter. I'm thinking, am I going to actually have to use the council facilities of the rest centre when they eventually get us off? But we managed to move. By 5 o'clock that night, the rest centres had been set up. By 11 o'clock that night, the catering staff were out and providing meals to those that had to use the rest centre at 11 o'clock at night. Over the course of the event, so I've got a second slide that will show you all the statistics, fascinating facts, members. We fed them 560 people over a 20-hour period, etc., and everything that came with that. Oops. Go away, please. No, it's not going to go. Anyway, it'll go in a minute. All right. Janet, technology, and Kate. Thank you, James. I know. As I said to Janet, when I do presentation councils, you know, I do 2 slides because brain, technology, and Kate's mouth don't engage at the same time. So see, we had the rest centre set up at night. We had a new catering manager at the Douglas Shirt, 4 members of staff. Never experienced this before. Totally isolated. They did it. They delivered. We had a Stranraer Academy going into the Ryan Centre. And all this time, we have communities with no power, no food, etc., etc. So the garage stores on the Saturday night, we had already geared up the mobile vans, again, that members through the Winter Resilience gave us. They were key for the communities. We could load up our trailers, bring them through, deliver them to the community of Whithorn on the Sunday afternoon, and the community did it for themselves. The community spirit was amazing. We then, of course, had to feed the roads guys. They were out, as you know, working long hours. We delivered soup, packed lunches, etc. for them, as well as the people in the bunker. So, as I say, in my summary, I'll give you more detail about the spirit of all that sort of thing. On the other side, care and support services, obviously, we are caring for vulnerable people out there. And I have to express the sincere thanks of this, my service, to our home carers who went above and beyond at that weekend to deliver to their vulnerable clients. We had ladies getting lifts up, Hope Health and Safety, no lifting, on tractors, etc., from the local farmers to go and meet vulnerable. We had a carer, Jackie, in Newton Stewart area, where, at Pop Hill, who phoned her sister who lived in the next street, who was a nurse, come with me, we'll have to walk up because I have a service user who has been on her own, we need to go and check her, and they just got on and did it. We had husbands of carers who were driving their carers about. It was absolutely fantastic, and we delivered where we possibly could. We also were supporting the non-council providers as well in some areas where their carers couldn't access, etc. And obviously the close link with social work services colleagues through the whole process of this. And thankfully, there was no service user vulnerable at risk during that time. Okay, Janet, next slide's not moving. Oh, we go. So I'm not going to talk any longer because I can do my summary at the end. So really, members, that's just a kind of fascinating fact. We fed 560 people in the rest centres over a 20-hour period. We delivered mega soup, mega tea bags, etc., out to the communities. Mega soup. At the end of the day, that's key because what the communities wanted was their power, heat and food back on. And I think my last task on the Sunday night about 7 o'clock was going to the local supermarket and buying an emergency pack of food for a young family that were stranded with a 7-month-old baby and a 2-year-old with absolutely nothing. And the roads guys came up to the market at 4 before and delivered it for us, I say before the close of play. But I'll do that in the summary. So as you can see, busy, a lot of people out there, and as I say, that's another world of facilities management. And Carl.
Okay, really the main point that we made is that we're working very much in partnership with the roads to clear away the snow. Obviously we've got a resource that was available at that time. So we mobilised the grounds maintenance staff to clear entrances into schools. That happened on the Friday morning. Grounds maintenance staff also cleared access to cemeteries, ensuring funeral services could proceed. I think we had a total of 8 funerals over the 2 days. One was cancelled by the family who couldn't get into the area, but every other one happened, and that was down to the effort of the guys. We mobilised the street cleansing staff to assist the road services to clear footpaths, roads, etc. Refuse collection was obviously another big issue. Where we could, where it was safe to do so, we mobilised the troops to go out and lift the bins. Where they couldn't, the majority were lifted within the following week. Obviously, we couldn't get access everywhere, but where we could, we cleared the refuse away. So that was our main input.
I've got a few bullet points first, but then I've got some photographs, so I better go through the bullet points pretty quickly. I visited the Newton Stewart depot to see the guys there after the event, and the highlight of the event for them were the little bags of food that Kate's staff had issued, actually. The depots became a focal point, a real focal point for the response, and there was a number of agencies camped out in the depot. Probably the most important of those was Scottish Power and the repair work that we're carrying out. So following on from the event, we realised the significance of our depots and the requirement for communications and some resilience in terms of maybe emergency generators for the future. I've got the other numbers of subcontractors we provided. That's just an approximation. It was probably well over 100 with various different items of plant that I'll be able to show you in the slides that are coming up. The task was really made difficult by drifting snow, and it meant that for all that we mobilised all our gritters and all our plant, it simply wasn't enough to clear the snow. The gritters are totally ineffective against 8-foot drifts. So it was a case of, a coordinated approach, working in conjunction with local contractors, digging out the road, then importantly following on behind with the gritters to get rid of the thin film of compacted snow that was left. The work was prioritised. You heard Kate mention, you know, some of the care staff and the requirements to meet clients, etc. Often through the bunker, there was close communication with the bunker, the council's emergency centre. Throughout the period, they would send us to locations where there were problems with people, maybe that were on dialysis or somebody had to visit the hospital, for example. Self-help was evident in a number of locations, and it was good to see members of the public cleaning their own streets out, etc. And I have to say the feedback from my service was really good, and there wasn't really many adverse comments at all. I've got some photographs here that illustrate some of the points I was making. This is Beeswing, and I think you can see here the snow is just blowing back across the road as quickly as we can clear it. There's another image of the same area. Eventually, it got to about Sunday evening, and the A711 had been closed for the duration. And Beeswing became the focal point for all our works. We had a 360-degree excavator, 2 JCBs, and 3 lorries hauling the snow away to a lay-by further down the road. It was the only way we could get the road open again, but it did in fact open on the Sunday evening. This is one of our snowplows. This was probably one of the best treated roads in the whole of the Stewartry, just down the road from the depot. You can see they're ploughing snow at that depth, but when it gets too deep, it's just ineffective. And our gritters were mainly deployed on the roads that had been cleared, widening them out and just doing their normal salting runs. This is one of the items of plant that we deployed to clear snow. This is actually from a quarry and isn't licensed for the public road, but in consultation with the police, they actually turned a blind eye. But it moved huge quantities of snow. The difficulty with these was actually getting the snow off the road. The bucket doesn't move, and it was quite difficult getting the snow off the road. It's an excavator on the A711 between Dundrennan and Auchencairn, in fact, moving snow. And this was useful. It's a 360-degree excavator. It could dump it into the surrounding fields quite well. Again, this is the excavator working. There was a real requirement to keep all these items of plant refueled throughout the period, and this is one such journey that one of our foremen made. And it's at the same area on the 711. And I think you can see this is the image that was featured in all the national press, I think. I saw some of it in the national press. And I think the perspective makes it look worse than it really was, but it's bad enough. Sorry, you probably know it was bad. Yeah. Sorry, that's all I have to say at the moment. I think Kate's going to provide the roundup.
I think the last bit, members, just so she can get a kind of, but I'm sure you have already, a feel for the partnership working within DGFirst. Members will be aware, maybe they're not aware, that I live in the west of the region, and from my house I could neither go west or I couldn't go east, so my base for that weekend was Barncurk Depot. I'm nosy, I like to know what's going on. So I'll just give you a quick experience of being in that depot. From the Friday night, the guys were out, etc., on the roads. We were planning, we were preparing. Catering teams were preparing. You can imagine the phones were red hot. On the Saturday, things began to heat up, if you like, because we needed to get food and supplies out, etc., etc. On Sunday, Scottish Power, I was sitting at Barncurk, and this guy came in from Scottish Power, and he said, there's 8 articulated lorries with 8 generators arriving. Can we use the Barncurk depot to offload them with a crane, please? There was no hesitation. It was done. It was dusted. We had, on the Sunday, our stores had come through from Dumfries. We offloaded at Barncurk. I had my service manager facilities took control of the distribution to the local areas. He was working with roads guys, he was working with building services guys from the west, he was working with the grounds guys. Nobody challenged them why a service manager from catering was telling them what to do or asking them to contribute. The camaraderie was great. I actually had to go a trip myself in the 4x4 to look for overhanging branches that was about to bring a power cable down in Minigaff. So everybody was working together and the spirit was tremendous. There was nothing too much for me to ask of the Rhodes guys or Fraser's guys if we needed to get access or for updates on everything. It was absolutely amazing. And I think what we have to recognise as well is that we really don't need to ask them. That's what they do. They just turn up in these situations and they work together and they deliver on it. And then we have the debrief and then we go into the recovery. So that was my experience at Barncurk. It was well worth it, and I'm sure that was the experience that was shared in all the other depots across the region. Ronnie was stuck at home, pick up the phone. Ronnie, I need such and such. No problem, Kate. As long as you feed my men, I'll do this. My regional manager, facilities management, was stranded in Winreath. Carol did all the coordination from her landline because mobile lines were down for all the staff and communications and timelines and updates and food provision. Jane Gordon, bless her heart, cleaning services officer at Whitehorn, she just took control down there for us. She could keep us up to date. She managed to set up the burger vans when they arrived. The communities did it all, etc., etc. She said a wonderful experience. But I think what we have to recognise too is the community spirit that seemed to be out there and the resilience of these communities during this whole process. And again, from the home care staff who were maybe not rotated on to work, but they turned out to deliver the soup and the hot food, etc., as we prepared it, because they knew that that was growing in the community. So I can't praise the team enough, Chair, but as I say, it's what they do. When things get tough, as I say, they step up to the mark. Thank you.
If I may, one service that we couldn't get represented here is building services. And they, particularly in the Far West, did a huge amount of work in sourcing generators and space heaters and then installing those in village halls where there wasn't necessarily the provision to put big generators in. So our electricians and our fitters did a sterling job as well.
I think that's been really interesting, and thank you all very much. What I would hope we might get at some point is actually what else you need. I mean, it was great that you had your 4x4s, good that you had the chargers in there, that they could be used, everything else, that's great, but I don't imagine everything was perfect. And so, therefore, at some point, we will need to have something back to deliver in a case like this, which hopefully won't happen again for a while. What do we need to have as backup? I didn't realise, for instance, that you had stores. I mean, food from October. I mean, that's fantastic. I don't know if anybody else knew on the committee, but I didn't realise that's what you did. So, but I don't know if you. I mean, you said something about emergency generators. Did we not have enough of those, Charles? Sorry. In the depots.
Sorry. Yeah, that's something I've been speaking with my colleagues in emergency planning about, just what the status of our depots would be in any future emergencies. And there are some uses. I know at Abercrombie we do have a generator, but it's not properly adapted for use in these sort of circumstances. So it's something that we're continuing to look at in the debrief of the road service, DGFirst service, and then the council as a whole.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sitting here feeling kind of guilty because I was in shirt sleeves down in Stockham in South Devon when this was all going on. But then it was tough, so I managed to get through it. But I think what I'd like to say to you is that the impact it had on the people of South Devon, right, because they saw it in the national news, and they're one of the few local authorities in England who've actually got conditions on the moor that can be very similar to this. There was a huge respect went out, and I think the telling one was when I think it was the ITV guy down at Glenluce was standing horizontal and at the wind, and the snow was going horizontal, sort of level with him. That's my wee holiday story, but that's not the reason I've asked the question. I'm going to ask a question, is do you think we need to replicate store at Gareth across the region? You said you had a central store. Given that the roads between here and the worst affected areas were the areas, is there a need, do you think, for us to have like mini dumps in strategic locations throughout the region?
We do that through the schools. We, as Kate mentioned, we increase the food holding in certain schools to take account of that. I think with all of these things, and the Chair's comment earlier, there's a balance between the level of resource we commit to business continuity and resilience as to the potential impact. Now, I've only worked in Dumfries and Galloway for some 29 years, but I'm assured by those who've lived here for longer, this was the worst snow since 1963. I can only go back and say it was probably worse than the big snow of 96, but if it's a 1 in 50 year event, it's difficult to gear up totally for it. It's a balance which we will review and look at.
Yeah, just a second, Pat, if I could. Yeah, I take your point, Bill, entirely, that was the snow, but the high winds here can cause kind of the same circumstances, are not a rare occasion in Dumfries and Galloway, and I'm actually wondering, in terms of emergency planning, claiming that discussion with them, whether we've actually considered having bigger dumps. I take your point about stocking up the schools and that wouldn't be the case in the wind. But
it's something that we will certainly look at, yes.
Leader?
Noticed Charles mouthing something as he sat down. I think he'd forgotten to mention about costs. And it was just an update because there have been sort of estimates at the start, and are they coming down slightly, going up, or about where they should be?
Yeah, we still haven't finished counting the cost, is the answer, but to date we're talking about, for the response alone, for the road service in its entirety, it's probably about $750,000 for those few days. Yeah, that's compared to an annual budget of approximately $2 million. So it maybe puts it into perspective. We're still looking at the damage to the public road network, and some of that damage is quite obvious if you drive along the A711, but it's not so obvious in other areas, and we've got to carefully survey the road network. For example, surface dressing, whilst there might be a huge gouge in the road that's been caused by one of these items of plant, in some instances the surface has just been scraped off and chippings have been taken off as well. So we're carrying out extensive survey work at the moment, as far as the council's Belwyn claim is concerned, to come up with an actual final figure.
I think it might be quite a good idea just to explain. We have a thing called the Bellman scheme, which is in place for severe weather, I think, is it?
The Belwyn scheme is named after a civil servant from, I think, the 1960s. It's a scheme whereby central government will fund extraordinary costs for local authorities. In Scotland, it's administered by the Scottish Government. The Scottish ministers have already indicated that the Belwyn scheme would be activated for the 3 worst affected authorities, including ourselves. The Belwyn scheme pays appropriate costs above a threshold. That threshold for Dumfries and Galloway is assessed at £775,000. I know the last time that Belwyn scheme was implemented for our council, the forensic accountants employed by the Scottish Government took a very narrow view of appropriate costs. So the claim, if you like, under Belwyn is being put together by Planning and Environment Services on behalf of the council. And we will get some money back, but I would hesitate to say quite how much.
So, with regard to our accounts, what happens to them when we were about to just make £5,000 profit or something?
Well, yes, it's an interesting issue. The effects on the revenue account are quite disastrous. As Charles mentioned, we think we have spent about £750,000 more than we were anticipating. We have, in the severe weather fund, £454,000. So some of that is catered for. The rest will appear as an overspend in our monitoring. And we're currently discussing at the corporate management team how best to meet those remaining costs.
And so will we see that, when will we see that coming through the accounts?
We will be doing our outturn reports to June committee.
Councillor Peacock.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of small points. Firstly, one of an aside, if you would rather. There was a plea on national television went out from Alex Haswell. If members of the public would kindly return the blankets that they were donated at the time. Just wondering whether that worked. And secondly, just as a point, I'm quite sure that local contractors and farmers, etc., with the plant and machinery that you may have utilised to help clear the snow, do they get reimbursed with fuel costs that they use, or did they apply for that, or were they quite happy just to come out and help as a community resilience type, or just...
Yes to all of those.
Councillor Driver, sorry.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt it was a very unusual weekend, and we saw how the community and the staff in DGFirst and the council actually got together, and there's absolutely no doubt we commend what they actually did. It was also unusual in the fact that Eskdale, Muir and Langham had absolutely no snow, which made a change, you know, because that bit's usually blocked with that particular thing. I think that what we saw that weekend was a very unusual weekend, and we have to remind ourselves that it is an unusual weekend, and we don't expect that to happen every weekend of the year, and thankfully it doesn't. So we have to take that in respect with the risk, as Bill said earlier on. I think the learning opportunities should be recorded somehow, so that it can maybe come forward at a future committee, that if we do require to spend some money, we could ask the policy and resources to consider that at a future date. But I think the main thing for me was the commendable work that all the staff did in that particular area, and in particular when you look at what happened on the Isle of Arran, and places like that, and the amount of time that they were off grid for, you could actually see how well the staff worked together here in Dumfries and Galloway. So just commending that.
I think one of the issues for us, that I think the number of debriefs that have already been held, hot debriefs, warm debriefs, cold debriefs, heads starting to spin, because we're looking at it with our emergency planning partners as well. But one of the things that we will be doing internally is looking at our business continuity arrangements. For us, it's not just about the response, it's also about continuing to deliver services. And those sorts of arrangements for business continuity apply to a power failure, a snow event, heavy rainfall, trees falling down, the whole range of things. So as part of the learning process from that, we will bring back some indication if we need additional spend. For example, we had just started to put in provision with our fleet services power supplies at Commerce Road for our fuel supply, because that's the only underground tank we've got. All the others are above ground, so you can always get fuel out. Those sorts of things are a routine matter for us. But certainly if we need additional expenditure, we'll come back and ask for.
Well, again, I think as a committee, we'd like to thank you as Director, Bill, but the staff particularly, three that are here today. Kate, very well done. Charles, Fraser, thank you. And I hope you don't have to do that again, but it's very good to know that you're so well prepared should it happen. Anyway, not sooner, not at all. So that's great. Thank you very much for that update. The next one on our list is the trunk road subcontracting arrangements. And Ronnie, I just wondered if you could take us through that as to where we are with that.
Thank you, Chair.
That I can just tell you is where I live. That was us, just there. That. So that was why it was being opened. It was why it's Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Again, to our committee and members, just an update with regards to the trunk roads. As members will be aware that Amy's involvement on the trunk road network ceased to be in place from the 31st of March this year. We have been in some fairly lengthy discussions with Scotland Transerve, who is now Transport Scotland's agent for the maintenance and management of the trunk road network across Dumfries and Galloway. This has been very much around contractual terms to give them a package that hopefully they saw as being beneficial to themselves for the delivery of roads maintenance services across the network in Dumfries and Galloway. And I'm pleased to say, members, that from the 1st of April, Transerve have taken us on board initially due to the contractual discussions, initially on for winter operations, which are still continuing with them until the 15th of May, and all emergency operations, if there's an RTA or anything of that nature, Transerve will call upon ourselves to deliver that. We have been working through some 14,500 items within a bill of quantities for them, and we are, I think it's fair to say, probably about 95% concluded on all rates for works activities based around routine and cyclical maintenance activities with them. Transerve are very much of the opinion that Dumfries and Galloway's DGFirst is a very good, safe pair of hands for the delivery of their maintenance down here in the southwest, and they want to continue that process. We are hoping that in the next 2 to 3 weeks we should almost be there with all items of activity fully signed off and agreed. There will be still 1 or 2 more detailed items that have to be discussed, such as some of the winter equipment for next winter season, because it's a different type of kit to what we have on the local authority. We have another meeting this afternoon with them over that. Transerve, again, are looking very much as DGFirst as a one-stop shop for anything that may happen in the southwest. And it's clear that the packages of work and the way they are scheduling up work, they are taking a more pragmatic approach to the delivery of the trunk road network maintenance. And it's clear that there are some substantial benefits to ourselves with potential increased turnover from them. So it's all going well just now. The discussions are going on a weekly basis, and so much so that we are looking to jointly house my trunk road team and the Transerve team within a depot, so that we have, should there be another winter event, close working relationships so that we can ensure that the delivery is seamless and both working to the aim. So it's going well. As I say, there will be some bits and pieces still to be bottomed out at this time, but we're meeting weekly to go through rates. But the packages of work are there, and they're ready to roll this out. They're obviously as well raising some issues with regards to the condition of the network that they have down here, and there could be additional benefits to ourselves, that there seems to be potential of some additional money being released to bring up the network down here to a level that they thought was appropriate. So that again is what they're feeding back through in our weekly meetings. So as it stands at this time, we're just about there, and we are now working in partnership with Transerve, and that'll be rolled out further over the coming weeks.
Thank you, Ronnie. Leader?
Just with regard to if we're travelling about our areas and we see some defects, how can we now feed that into Transerve And is there a sort of central contact number? It's still the Amy one, or is there a new one?
Chair, through you. There is a new one, Transerve, as you'll probably notice on the trunk roads just now. I've been rushing around taking down the old, if you find a fault or defect, phone Amy on 0845. I'll happily circulate the new number. They've just literally moved into their new offices. Their new control room has been set up, and it's been quite a transition from Amy's way to Transerve's way, but they're just about there, so I'll circulate that around to members so that they have the number for Transerve.
Thank you. You brought up some issues with the conditions of the roadworks in the area. Could you expand on that a little?
Obviously, the issue that is being discussed is very much an issue between Scotland Transerve and Transport Scotland over condition at the date of handover. What they have indicated to us is that they have made an assessment and have made a request to Transport Scotland to allow additional monies to be allocated to their contract to bring that road up to, in their eyes, a condition that is acceptable at the time of transfer. So it's very much a contractual issue between Scotland Transerve to Transport Scotland. If they are successful in that, then it could be beneficial to ourselves with additional works coming to Dumfries and Galloway.
Peacock.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned, Ronnie, that in the Bill of Quantities there's thousands of different aspects here for you to look at. Apart from the obvious ones of the actual maintenance with the roads, etc. itself, what might be some of the more abstract issues that you have to deal with and look to put figures on? I mean, it may be we see sometimes as we're going along, they're on the side of the carriageway and they're clearing back trees and that, so they've got a certain distance. And I mean, would you be involved in that sort of work? And just some of the more abstract things that you have to cope with.
I think a lot of it comes down to people see the pothole being filled on the trunk road, or that's the type of activity. But it's going right back to, if you take it in the concept of it's a council road, it's the same principle. It's everything from drainage to high amenity grass cutting, to landscape maintenance, to street lighting maintenance and inspections, sign washing, potential for crash barrier repairs, white lining, chart studs, maintenance to pumps on drainage systems, etc., etc., traffic signals, traffic lights, traffic counter, all these elements are there. That's the type of activity that they have put across. Over and above that, there is patching, there is winter maintenance, there is emergency patching response, there is emergency response, where it's slightly different now that they wish us to have designated vehicles that are badged up in a certain way for fast, rapid response, so that all these elements, and that's what's built into the 14,000 items that we've had to wade through and specifications.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ronnie. You mentioned about winter equipment in Trunk Road. Would this be included grit bins provided by Transerve?
Yes. If there are grit bins placed on the Trunk Road network that Transerve have asked us to maintain that are part of the Trunk Road infrastructure, that would be the case, yes.
Thank you. I recently got inquiry from my constituent that they've been refused to have a grit bin provided by the council because they are in the Trunk Road. I think this is very unfair for the community who would like to take part in a community resilience scheme. I wish to talk to you later on. Thank you.
Councillor Driver.
One of the issues, of course, Ronnie, might be that there's been a road traffic accident and there's been a fire in a wagon, and that actually affects the trunk road. And you mentioned about the quick response vehicles, if you like, having been marked up in a certain way. Is that what you're talking about? Is it, that would, of course, be insurance claim as well from individual wagons or whatever.
I think it's worth mentioning we are not taking on the major elements of risk within this contract. One of the largest element within the contract is damage to Crown property. Now that's where you can have someone, as you'll probably see when you drive any road, where vehicles have left the carriageway, chewed up the verges, or they've skiffed off the crash barrier, or they've knocked a sign down. That's very much a risk that we said was unacceptable for Dumfries and Galloway Council to try and track down these people. Transerve, as Amy had previously, have a dedicated team of people that is there to hunt the culprits down to try and recover these costs. When you get the damage on the road, such as the fire, that will be a decision that will ultimately be made by Transerve on what they want to do. From the way we're going in the discussion, there is going to be closer working with Transerve so that it is beneficial to both parties, that we're not going in 1 week to fix a fire damaged section of carriageway and then going back in 2 weeks later and then filling a pothole. They're looking at it in a more pragmatic way so that we can maximise the pound that we're spending and the pound that Transerve see us spending. So we want it to be more joined up and more linked up, and that's what they want as well. The specialist vehicles within the contract, from the old Amy contract, it was basically any vehicle could turn up. Now they're looking for something that's a bit more, for the want of a term, in your face to the public, that can see that this is a rapid response vehicle to an incident, that will have the ability to deal with a dangerous pothole, that will be able to fix a road sign, or will be able to deal with a chemical or oil spillage. And these things will be on that vehicle 24/7 so that they can assist the police and others at these scenes.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks, Chair. I know we're talking here primarily about the trunk roads, Ronnie, but do we chase up the same costs for the roads that are our responsibility? And just that ensures Bill's nodding his head so the question's answered. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Now, I just have one more thing, which is, as I mentioned earlier, that we'd have a briefing on the A705, the erosion, A708, sorry, at Bravefoot, which I think Mr. Clemmy is going to take us through.
This is just a brief update on the A708. The A708 Moffat to Selkirk Road was closed on Sunday, 14th of April 2013. The road embankments are scoured by the adjacent watercourse. It's a very, very small catchment area up there, but it's got very, very steep sides. So that results in a very short but high intensity flooding event. And that's what occurred last Sunday morning and washed it out. And I have got some photographs of it. There was an early requirement to get licences from SEPA and SNH. This might sound quite straightforward, but it wasn't. And it required the design team, our own in-house design team, and the maintenance team to turn it around very quickly, come up with a design, method statements, etc. And they gained approval Monday afternoon to go in. And we mobilised plant Tuesday morning. So thanks to them for that response, and SEPA and SNH for helping out as well. There's a long alternative route here, and so as a result, there was a lot of urgency in carrying out the repair. The cost of the works that you'll see, approximately £50,000, and I can confirm that the road will in fact reopen to traffic tomorrow. That's the location. You can see the little red circle up the top there, just north of the Grey Mare's Tail, and you can see the alternative route on the other side. It's fairly remote, which didn't help with getting the plant and equipment and material up there to carry out the work. That's the actual damage that occurred to the road. It was actually a lot more expansive than that. When we started to excavate, we found that the existing training walls had actually been washed out and the water had got behind them. you can see here. This is the process that was adopted in repairing the road. It was a case of putting these large stones, rock armour, along the adjacent to the watercourse. It's just like building a dry stone dike with a big digger, effectively. You can see again the work in progress, and this is almost the finished article. This was a day or so ago, and that has got to be surfaced over. You can see, I've put this photograph in just to let you see the extent of the works. Quite a length of protection work carried out while we're in the area. There's some works that are proposed for this next financial year, the financial year that we're in at the moment. And I know that there's some discussions taking place between the commissioners and deliverers from my section tomorrow to discuss these works in the light of what's happened. I should probably put them in perspective. There's actually about 450 vehicles a day use this route. And if you were to compare that with the A709, for example, there's 6,500 vehicles per day use that route. So, you know, it's worth considering that. Happy to
I initially, when I heard about this, assumed it had been part of the steep banking. I had assumed it had been part of the steep banking. So really, I thought that would be weeks we would be without access to that road. So in actual fact, where it happened was quite fortunate, although it's quite a big hole, to be fair. And I think £50,000 doesn't sound astronomical in road repair terms. So well done. It's very good. There's that list of other works that need to be done. Are they just small remedials, or are they big portions of that road that are requiring work done?
Yes, Chair, it's a combination of a number of different types of work. It's drainage work and embankment support, not necessarily where there's the erosion by the watercourse, but there is water runs off the side slope adjacent to the road. It's caused the road embankment to erode as well. So there's that, and surfacing also. We actually did take the opportunity today, because we're ahead of time, to partially complete one of those schemes while the road was closed, because it would have necessitated the road being closed again. So we thought we'd just take advantage of that, and we're working on those today before we open the road.
Thanks, just through you, Chair. The bit that the extra bit you've done, is that where the temporary traffic lights were, where it was really bad, and you've been taking trees down as well? I was up that road just a couple of days before that happened, and I'm really quite worried about the erosion of the bankings, and the barriers seem to be on. I don't know how they're managing to stay there, to be honest with you. They're just clinging on and no more. And whilst I appreciate you're saying there's not a great number of vehicles go up and down, and whilst we might not be happy with them, there's still a significant number of coaches with 40 and 50 people in them using that road. And I'm just worried about that risk. So can you give us an idea which ones it is that you're currently, you've repaired and the road was closed?
It's certainly not that one. That one does involve a more comprehensive structural solution, which is, as I said, part of the discussions tomorrow. It was more where there was potholing and erosion from water crossing the road. It's those. We certainly didn't have the time to go in and do that scheme. That'll be something that will come to light again as the year progresses, and we will have to have another road closure for some of these works.
Okay, thank you. I was actually also worried about the one between where that was, past the Greymare's Tail, as you climb up towards the County March, where there's been a temporary barrier in there for at least a year. And that is where I'd be worried about coaches going sideways, down, coming in the corner and meeting people in the middle of the road.
Certainly, Chair, I can't say exactly if that application has been completed today. There was a limited amount of time, but I'll look into that one and let you know exactly what the current position is.
Well, thank you for that, and I'm very pleased that it's going to be open tomorrow. That's absolutely excellent. I have no further business. Thank you all very much.